This week on the MovementRVA Podcast, we have a conversation with John Huston, who owns Pacific Crest CrossFit, and we talk about why efficiency is the worst word ever.
I need you, I so need you. Stay nice for one more day. Give me the one from the start and the love from the change.
Welcome back. Episode 7. We have a great guest today.
A great one.
A longtime friend.
John Huston. What's up, John?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
We have been waiting for this since the podcast was conceived.
Episode 1. We've been waiting for this moment.
We wanted John on.
Feel honored.
John is the owner of Pacific Crest CrossFit in Portland, Oregon.
He's also my one of my original business partners at CrossFit RVA. Helped us grow to the gym we are today. So he's been working with
Third
us.
co-owner.
Yes. Matt was a co-owner.
I was a co-owner at one point.
No, you were the first, right?
It was like a triumvirate of owning the gym.
We won't talk about the second one.
No, that's the name we do not mention.
But like the Highlander, there can only be one.
There could only be one.
That was Jake's goal from the beginning.
And that was Jake.
There was just I had it written in my notebook day one.
Yeah.
How do I get rid of all these people?
Let me tell you a story of a young Jake, around 20 years old, when I lived with him in the college days.
You lived in front of the gym, which was your alley.
Right. We lived in front of the gym, which was the alley. I was walking down the long hallway in our old house from 1915, and I heard this weird kind of laughing.
Yeah.
And the door to his room is cracked open, and I look in, and Jake has this globe in his lap, and he's just like stroking it, laughing.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew that this would probably happen one day.
And, you know, to follow on to that, one of the... I think it was once Jake was sole owner of CrossFit RVA and Superfit came into picture, maybe. We drew a map on the whiteboard in his office with the areas he controlled and the areas he would soon control. And I feel like that's happening.
I left that dry erase map up on my office wall for at least a year.
Yeah. So,
and it's all come to fruition.
I feel like he's probably got another globe at home we don't know about. Like Risk.
I want to do the angry Hitler meme, but with Jake.
Yeah.
And he's just screaming about dominating the competitive exercising world.
Yes.
Y'all got to have goals. It's important.
Let's take care of some business first.
Let's do it.
Go to the YouTube page, CrossFit RVA, hit the subscribe button. Every week, you're not only going to get this podcast,
which is amazing.
It's amazing. You're also going to get videos of training tips, programming advice, recovery techniques, and we're going to do some more cool stuff in the future, much like the documentary about Morgan at the Arnold. Also, you can find us on iTunes if you search Movement RVA. A lot of people say, give us 5 stars, give us a positive review. I don't care what you leave, but leave something.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. And that's it for business. The first segment. John, we ask everybody this.
Okay, I'm ready.
We feel like it's a very interesting question, especially when you have guests. What are your training goals right now? And give some of your background of how you've trained before and so on and so forth.
Personal training goals?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as a master, shifting into the 44, actually next year 45 to 49 category, my training goals are mainly maintenance. So how do I keep my strength levels at the levels that they are now? Mm-hmm. Understanding the volume that I can handle as an older athlete and kind of playing with training volume and that kind of thing. So goals are sustainment, really. Sustainment of conditioning, sustainment of strength levels. And I feel like in the masters categories, if you can sustain levels that you maintained in your 30s, then you're essentially improving over the field.
Would you say you're trying to stave off death right now?
Definitely. 1 foot in the grave.
Yeah.
1 nano in the grave, but I try to keep it out.
Do you feel like your training goals have changed a lot since, say, I met you, or like in those first few years back in like 2008 and 2009?
They definitely have, but I think part of the training goals changing they change as the landscape of competitive exercise changes, CrossFit changes.
Oh, talk about that. What do you mean exactly?
Well, I mean, the field is, you know, when Jake and I were running the gym, I think, when was the last sectionals? 2010?
I think so, yeah.
So we went to sectionals. The team, RVA sent a team to regionals after that. And, you could be an everyman and get into that. And obviously that's not the case anymore. It's not something that I have a negative opinion about. I think it's great. I think the field's open and we see some phenomenal people competing. But, for the everyman, it's no longer an option. So training for high-level competition is no longer a goal for me. So
I think it's funny that most of the people we have on, and most of us just want to not get worse and not die. That's the only real goals that we have.
I think these are noble goals.
Yeah.
It says something about us.
Yeah.
I feel like we say, hey, we're just like you, and we're not going to rub elite people in your face.
Right. I'm training for immortality just like everybody else.
Training for immortality. You said something about adjusting volume.
Yeah.
How have you had to modulate your volume, or what are some of the things you've done to accommodate for
so
your advancing age?
My advanced age. So Jake, went pretty hard in the paint, as we say, with the competitive programming this year. Went through a number of different variations on trying to understand competitor programming and where to focus attention, and a lot of that includes volume. And so on the West Coast, me and a couple of the folks followed one of the segments that he was using and found it was just far too much volume for us. We could handle it for 2 or 3 months, and then after that, injury crept in, overtraining, just, manifesting in not wanting to train crept in. So, I think part of it's understanding, Jake and I have talked about this before, understanding individual athletes. There are people in the gym who are not, I'm 43, but they're 25-year-olds that can't handle the volume that another 25-year-old can or another 45-year-old can. So it's understanding yourself and then understanding as you age, like your ability to recover. So
I like it.
Great answer.
Let's not get too far in the programming. We got a lot of programming talk ahead of us.
So then let's do my favorite segment, things we don't like this week.
Awesome.
I feel like it somehow turned into things we hate in our recent poll.
Got very violent. What we did is we submitted the question to our users or our listeners, or I don't know, whatever you guys are, on Facebook, and we got a lot of hilarious responses. So this is one from Jake, actually. He hates saying that a workout is or got spicy.
I agree with that. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what it means. How is spicy a good descriptor here?
I mean, is it because your body heats up? I don't. What's the comparison?
Yeah, what's the correlation on that?
Yeah, correlation. Good.
I don't know. And I also feel like it's like showing off. It's like no one's like, I did this workout and it was pretty easy today.
Right.
It's if you say it's spicy.
It was a pretty savory workout today.
You're letting everyone know that you worked out very hard on this particular day, and you would like everyone's applause.
You want the credit for the spiciness level that you attained.
Yeah. So I feel like it's used quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then it'll be gone in like a month.
Maybe we could add chili pepper levels to workouts. That would indicate spiciness level.
What is that called? There's a name for how hot a pepper is. I used to know the name.
Oh, like the scale.
Like ghost chilies are at the top.
Yeah.
That was a ghost chili today.
I feel like we can...
Is there a pepper emoji that... I don't use emojis or emoticons. I don't know how they work. But is there a pepper one?
You should use them, and I don't know. I'm going to find this scale. But anyways, what else do we...
We had 97 comments on this. So it was one of our more popular posts.
In the gym's history.
Scoville scale.
Scoville scale.
I've heard of that.
We can make a Scoville scale.
For workouts.
Yeah.
Or we can maybe whenever anyone posts that their workout was spicy, we ask them on the Scoville scale.
What would you rate that?
I feel like they should always use the addendum Scoville. Like that was a 10 Scoville.
I feel like this is good.
Maybe we can start, because this is a very trendy community, we can start a new trend that people follow for about 3 months and then quit.
That's right.
I hate when people say they're going to that dark place.
Yeah, that's very similar too.
Yeah.
It's you want the credit for working out extra hard that day.
Yeah.
And I think
you're the only one that can push yourself into an additional place.
I think that's what bothers me is like it's self-propelled. Like you chose to do that, so why are you telling everyone about it?
Right.
Now, if you were like forced by someone else to go to that dark place,
right,
that's maybe something I'll listen to.
Yeah.
But you
and I'd be interested in what that looked like.
Right.
but that would be different.
What does it say about you if other people don't have to go to the dark place to be better than you, though?
Yeah. Actually,
You should start rethinking a lot of your shit at that point.
You're actually degrading yourself by saying you go to the dark place.
I feel like people should just post very objective things like, hey, I think it's okay to say I got a new back squat PR.
Yeah.
This is it.
Great.
This is what I did.
Yeah.
This is an accomplishment of mine.
I'm proud of this goal that I achieved.
Do you know what I honestly think?
What's that?
People shouldn't say anything. Because you know if you have a back squat PR.
No.
I put this on the internet, and I'm going to say it on this thing. I had a mentor once who asked me, if you climb Mount Everest and not tell anyone, would you still do it? And the obvious answer for him and people like him was no. I wouldn't tell anybody. And I've always admired that. And I'm not that great at it, but I always try to filter everything I'm going to say with the Mount Everest analogy.
That's true.
On Facebook,
That actually, you just took away my need to squat 400 pounds.
I took it right away from you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I don't need that anymore.
You don't need it. Well, you need it, just don't tell anyone about it.
No, now I don't
I
even
think you'd
care.
rather
'cause
just tell people.
I just want to tell people.
I only post to Facebook personally like twice a year.
Yes, that's true.
And the only time I post is if I get a PR. So it is what
It's
it is.
something.
That's the
It
only
happens.
time I only PR
Jake,
twice a year, though.
You're the
Yeah.
epitome of everything that I dislike.
I know this. I've known this since we were 8. So
What's next? What else do we hate?
This is sort of in the same vein, so we'll only touch on it real quick. Hashtag rise and grind.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means, and I'm sad that you brought that to my attention.
If I had to guess, it means you wake up and then you do what you're supposed to do.
I feel like there's a potential good outcome to this. It's actually waking up and maybe grinding your own coffee beans.
I think that would be a
Way
much
better.
preferable to what it's actually trying to say.
Jake has
I do
many
grind, yeah.
advanced coffee makers. Maybe that's no.
Yes, I go hard on the coffee.
Yeah.
I feel like you're just describing the life of a blue collar dad. Rise and grind. Hashtag rise and grind.
Right. Yeah.
I would say my coffee goes to a dark place.
It does go to a dark place until you. Well, never mind.
So you what?
We'll leave it there.
Okay.
No cream.
All right, so we're going to throw out, this is going to be rapid fire, and I want to get a thought from each of you.
Mm-hmm.
When I say these words, what instantly comes to your head? Box.
Chipotle. I don't know.
I got nothing.
Metcon.
I'm okay with Metcon.
Yeah,
I say it all
Metcon-
the time.
Metcon's okay.
Oli. Or
People.
Ollie.
Oli is for CrossFitters that hate CrossFit.
Explain that, please.
The CrossFit elitists that advances out of CrossFit.
Oh, and they move on to weightlifting?
Yeah.
Why can't it just be called weightlifting? Because
Weightlift-
that's what it's called.
Right. That's what weightlifters call it.
Right. They don't call it Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah. They just call it weightlifting.
Just weightlifting.
Yeah.
One word.
Yep.
Here's a word that I hate. Efficient.
Why is that?
Why is everything described as efficient? This is a bigger issue for me, and I'll make this quick. 3 podcasts ago, I berated people who are constantly trying to get you to adopt a positive attitude, because I feel like
I'm with you on that, by the way.
Right. If you embrace, as the great man Kobe Bryant said, your villain nature from time to time, you'll find that it's useful.
Yes.
So trying to be positive all the time is ridiculous. I feel like efficient runs completely in that same vein as being positive all the time.
Well, I think it's a vanilla word. It's not like telling you. It's not a descriptor. It's like saying everything's excellent
Yeah, I
or
agree with
great.
that. Yeah.
It's not a. It's not saying what are you actually getting.
What are you trying to say to
Better
me
at.
right now?
Is that a real question?
No, I'm saying when you
Are
say
you asking
when
me
people
this?
say the word efficient, I want to say, what are you trying to say to me right
We
now?
have to go back through every single YouTube video and make sure we never say it. We have to change everything.
We've probably said it a million times.
Yeah.
We say it every single video.
Okay. Coach.
Hate it.
Coach is a guy with a clipboard and tube socks with red stripes pulled up to
Jake
his
and
knees.
I, having been co-workers and friends for many years, have eschewed the coach moniker
It's
that
true.
whole time.
Yeah.
Why?
I feel like it's just first when you're getting started with CrossFit.
I don't feel like we deserve it.
well, okay.
I feel like you're not an 80-year-old gym teacher.
At first, CrossFit wasn't a sport at all. Like it wasn't like you couldn't even look at it like quite like that in 2007.
Right. That's another thing.
So it just didn't make sense. I also feel like it'd be like I'm starting a gym and I'm doing some group classes and now I'm a coach. Like really what's the difference between that and then like running a spin class, and calling yourself a coach.
Right.
And I feel like if you say start an Olympic weightlifting team and you're like taking people to meets all the time or something. I mean, you're a coach at that point. Like,
so like you do.
There's a sport. I'm now a coach.
Jake, are you a coach?
I've now given myself
Are we calling
the
you
title
coach?
Coach.
I'd like to point out that we just had some shirts made for the gym's instructors, and that's what it says on the back. Instructor.
As it should.
Not coach.
Yeah.
I'm a little upset I didn't get a gym shirt that says like media or something.
RVA Media
Press.
Team.
Press.
Yeah.
Movement
I like that
Media.
Paparazzi. Whatever.
All right. When the locker room smells like a potpourri of microwave meals.
Hate it.
It's revolting anywhere you go.
I've actually had this conversation in this gym when I was a part of it. When this desk was over in the front and somebody was eating their heated up meal while a workout was going on.
With their mouth open.
I'm like, can you please?
Trying to work out here. Or the worst is when you get done with the workout and then you like smell like
Pulled pork.
and some green beans.
Yes.
And maybe some mashed up cauliflower.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take your revolting grass-fed brisket and farm-picked Swiss chard
And
somewhere
move
else.
aside.
It's not what you want to smell after a workout.
No.
John Huston, our esteemed guest, hates podcasts.
Yep.
That's a little ironic there, buddy.
Here we are, though.
Yeah, but now I'm present on one. I'm pushing the boundaries.
Do you like them more now?
I like the ones that I'm a part of.
And
I feel like that's fair.
I think that's fair. All right, last one. Those who don't trust the process, which is what this podcast is going to be about eventually, the process.
Like the famous, I need to lose weight before I start CrossFit. I need to get in shape before I start CrossFit.
I think that falls in there. I also think the people that are in mid-programming and they are crying to you because they're not PRing or
Right.
maybe they feel like they're slipping.
I agree with that.
Of course, we have issues with that. It happens.
Let's hear it.
I also hate saying trust the process, so I'm conflicted here.
But you know it has value.
I do.
Yeah.
I would never say trust the process. I feel.
But trusting the process has value.
Yeah, because that's saying you gotta trust people. You gotta trust the individual. I don't know. You can't just because there is a process doesn't mean it's a good one.
Fair enough.
So as a person that's afraid the process is not good and they're not trusting the process, how can they know if this process is working?
I don't know.
I think
they
You
just
gotta
gotta
find the right
trust.
people.
There's got to be a longer view. You know, you can't base it on the PR of the day. You got to see how over 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, what's your progress look like?
It's a long swim, not a climb to the top of a mountain.
That's right. Even though you would not tell people that you got there.
Right. I would never say I was at the top of the mountain.
No.
Let's take a break and we'll kick it over to whoever our new sponsor is this.
The Superfit Games is a competition series that gives athletes an opportunity to compete year-round. Everyone from those new to competing to former college athletes.
The thing I like about Superfits, they're always on time. The workouts are always good. They're good workouts, good movements, awesome people, friendly environment, great judging. I haven't had any problems with my judging as in other competitions I have. The people that run it are great.
I like introducing people into a good competition. This one's close, a lot of local events. It's a great comp.
In 3, 2, 1, let's go!
We provide a consistent competitive atmosphere, everything from the logistics to the programming. The Superfit staff is at every single competition we run, ensuring that you get the same experience every time you come.
I met really good friends at Forward. I met them through Superfit. I got some friends at RVA, Jamie, Jake, Derek, you know, those people, they're all a lot. I've expanded my friendship probably tenfold.
It's easy to go into the gym and just work out and not give it everything you got, but when you're here competing with all these great athletes, it makes you push yourself even more, which makes you better, makes you improve. So that's another reason why I do like doing competitions at Superfit.
The Superfit Games is a premier competition series in the Mid-Atlantic, and we're constantly expanding to other areas of the country.
It brings out a different side of people. They do things they never thought they could do. Our girls are here doing toes to bar and pull-ups, and it's just amazing to see somebody go from being just a regular fitness athlete to somebody turning into a competitor.
Are we ready to roll?
Is it turned on?
It is. Everything is on. We're live.
Who's ready for the provocation segment of this?
I'm ready.
I feel like this is just the content segment.
With some provocation thrown in.
We stage provocation.
We will. Welcome back. What a great message from our sponsors.
Now we have to have one.
We had a sponsor last week. We'll have one this week. They're really just Jake's companies.
Jake sponsors
CrossFit RVA.
Jake sponsoring himself.
Yeah.
I do it all the time.
Self-promoter. Shameless.
So, John, you've been programming for CrossFit RVA for how long?
Since 2008, right?
Yeah, that's when you bought in,
Yep.
got in the business, and been going since then.
Yeah.
Until this day, right?
Till this day.
I think not all of our members know, but John is still programming for the group classes.
I do.
And he, when did you move away to Portland?
End of 2012.
Yeah, so just kept going since then.
Yeah.
You know, said why not? We
Seemed to
had a
work
good
out.
we had a good thing going.
Jake was busy conquering the rest of Virginia.
He was marking states off of his map.
He said, if
Just
you could
crossing
continue
them
to do
off.
this so I can dominate the CrossFit world, then
Well, I think, I think there's this misconception that you can, just like throw some workouts together and you're going to have some decent CrossFit programming. I think just because it looks on the surface very random, you think it doesn't take maybe a high level of skill. So I didn't want to, I didn't want to start that. You'd already been doing it for a while. You had the skills. What are you going to say, Matt?
I was going to say, isn't that kind of how it was in 2008?
it was.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the early years, the cutting the teeth on programming,
Yes.
making it too hard.
Too hard, too random.
Yep.
That's the critique from everybody.
Yeah.
Even people that still hate CrossFit, though it's evolved into 2015 and what we do now.
Yeah. I feel like there's still a few people hanging on to this thing like you shouldn't have structured strength training or like it, I don't know. You
Pat
shouldn't.
Sherwood.
You can't.
Call people out, Pat Sherwood.
Well, I feel like it depends on what your goals are. So, like, the CrossFit mantra, main headquarters mantra is what's the best for general physical preparedness. And, you could make an argument that randomized training maybe does that. But when you start having, members that you account for that have goals for their strength and conditioning, then you have to structure it a little more. Or at least that's the way we've kind of come across it.
Yeah, I think what was nice back in the day is that, with it very random, not going out very far in advance, there was some excitement there. There was always like, what are we going to do today?
Yeah.
And I think there are probably still some really good people doing that, good athletes
But
or
there's
whatnot.
a lot going on in their training career and ability that they can walk up to the whiteboard and put on whatever they want.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll say that the nice thing about that, though, outside of just the excitement level, was that it was cool to we'd start warming up. We'd warm up for 4 minutes. We'd I don't know, swing my legs around a little bit, and then
Track warm up.
yeah,
Pull my legs.
pull your legs.
Yeah.
You would work out,
Tug on the old legs.
Yeah.
work out.
What does
for
that
10
do?
minutes.
Tugging on the old legs.
That's what you do at the track. You grab your foot,
Just tug
bring
on
it up behind yourself, and
Then you're warm.
and swing it around.
Yeah.
You'd work out for 15 minutes, and then you'd just be done.
Yep.
Those were
was
the
it.
days.
Yeah.
I think
the
that
glory days.
it talks about, or it kind of alludes to something we talk about a lot on here, and I feel like however your programming in 2008 reflected this, there was a point where CrossFit was a fitness regimen.
Mm-hmm.
Now CrossFit is a sports entertainment brand in some ways.
No,
There's a divergence between those two.
Yeah, there absolutely, and I think that was the point I was trying to make, and you said it more clearly, is that CrossFit.com programming is still a fitness regimen, and I think they would gladly take on that characterization, whereas most people in the CrossFit community aspire to some level of competitiveness, whether it's in their local gym or it's at a local competition or higher. So I think with that in mind, most people need more structured programming or want it. Whether they need it or not is probably another topic.
Well, I think you can clearly look at how much better people get year after year, and also look at programming trends and see some correlation there.
I agree.
I guess we are getting better and better people coming into the sport of CrossFit, but I mean, clearly people are way stronger than they were. Like, we're doing things now that would have been unheard of in 2008.
Like, regular people are doing inconceivable things for 2008.
Yeah, I mean, I remember 2008, 2009 timeframe getting, I don't know, some of our strongest women to hit the 95-pound snatch, benchmark. And now that's happening in a year. We're getting that kind of stuff quickly.
Yeah, 2010 regionals, when we took the team, we had, and we may even have talked about this. I don't know if John talked about it, but like, he snatched maybe like 210 pounds.
Yeah.
And people were like
freaking out
in the crowd.
Yep.
Is this guy just a weightlifter?
Right.
Is he some sort of specialist?
Yeah.
And at this point, like, I got so many people snatching over 210 pounds.
And they can't even get close to going to regionals.
Yeah. And like, 300 is the new 200-pound snatch,
It is.
So, and clearly I think a lot of that is better programming.
Yeah. And I think it's, in some ways, I think programming in the CrossFit environment is one of the most challenging places to work, because Jake jumped on he started understanding classical strength training before I did. So he started down that path earlier. He understands it better. He still is more interactive in the strength program than any other part of it because of that. But the downside to referring to those kind of classical structures is that's all they do. And so I think integrating that kind of stuff into CrossFit programming is the biggest challenge, because, we can talk, I know we're probably going to talk more about the year and how we break down programming across a large spectrums and small, but we can't look at it exactly the same way as the strength community or the endurance community or whatever, because we have to account for all these little pieces that have to be improving. And I feel like we have weaknesses still in our programming. I feel like overall gymnastics is probably not our strongest place.
I feel like that's the next big step. So would you say, when you're setting up the programming for CrossFit group classes, would you say that then the strength portion and how that's structured long term is the first thing you look at?
Absolutely.
So that's like the building block.
Yep.
Do you, and I know something we've done a little bit, maybe not gone too hard in, is backing up, going just a little bit before that strength building block and saying, like, over the course of the year, how do we want the programming to change,
Right.
in terms of right before, say right after the open, leading up to right before the open.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we've chosen the open as kind of the anchor for the training year, and it's good to have that anchor regardless of whether people are going to compete, because it gives us a structured season. So you have the people that are going to compete in the open, and that's going to work for them, and then you just have a point at which our training changes for the people that aren't. So that's great. So yeah, that's the way we've always looked at it. So we're post open now, and this has been pretty common for us for the last 2 or 3 years, where we're going to go into a fairly healthy strength cycle for 2.5, 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And but we're always juggling, this is our obvious, this period, this next 2 or 3 months is the area where we can get away with the most. We can really focus on heavy strength training, and then it starts to scale back even after the next 3 months. So then we're going to alternate. We're always looking at alternating slow lift strength cycles and weightlifting cycles and improving those skills, and then that's the foundation of the programming is how that's going to work leading up to the open, the strength cycles.
Right, because I feel like for so much of it, the strength cycle and that Metcon relationship, like you have to, we set up the strength cycles first, because then with that in place, we can program a lot of the other stuff around it. But if, you're just setting up, say, your conditioning workouts first, it's hard to say, like, all right, it's tomorrow a big squat day, and what do we have coming before it? So, I think having the strength cycle in place first is a great first step for us. What do you look at, and how do you see things changing, though, like in terms of volume or the types of conditioning workouts, or like over the course of the year outside of the strength work?
Well, it's going to depend, and I think RVA and Pacific Crest are going to see bigger changes this year with that. But and based on where you're at in that programming, what we're really, I think we've come to the conclusion over the last several years with programming is that to really be the most effective at getting stronger and faster, you don't need to do workouts every day. And so
Workouts meaning Metcons, right?
like Metcons.
Okay.
So you don't need to do that 15-minute AMRAP every single day to get better. In fact, you're probably getting worse if you're doing that throughout the whole year. So I think that's one of the considerations we have around the strength training, and you'll see that more this year, where we're going to reduce that and focus more on conditioning and supplementary work. And CrossFit's in an interesting phase because CrossFit's more mature than it was when we first started working together. And so you're getting people that have done CrossFit programming for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. And so we're seeing that the training has to change to accommodate advances in their progress. So that's one of the ways that we're going to see it. For our newer CrossFitters, what we use the level 1 and even into the level 2 programming for, I think still focusing on more Metcons, lighter strength work is going to be good. And I think this goes back to Jake's favorite saying, the trust the process thing. The thing that most new CrossFitters don't understand is that more is not better. You should embrace the period, this wonderful period when you first start lifting weights, where you can make progress with relatively little work compared to your peers that have been doing this for 6 or 7 years. And that allows you to get your conditioning and technique work up, whereas those people that are further down the path are going to have to spend more time on their strength programming and are going to have to neglect some of that other stuff in order to recover fast enough. And that's really the key, is the recovery. How much can you recover?
Right. You should do as little as possible,
yes,
as long as possible, until that doesn't work anymore.
Exactly.
Overcomplicating up front is, again, a great recipe for injury, or just, you're wasting your time at some point.
Say that again?
Which part?
You do as little as possible for as long as possible?
Yes.
Great philosophy in training.
Just economy of effort.
Probably a bad philosophy for life.
I like it as
well.
well.
Or good,
Yeah.
depending on who you are.
Yeah.
No, I like that. I also think more isn't better, better is better.
Yes,
in
exactly.
anything that you do.
Yep.
I think for some people maybe outside of the gym, which hopefully there's one listener. We have our Australian listener.
We have a someone from Spain.
Yeah.
I looked yesterday.
Australian, Spain.
So whoever downloaded from Spain, appreciate that.
I wish I knew some Spanish.
I don't know why you would download this podcast.
It'll get better.
I think one of the things we did early on, I see a lot more now, is the levels of programming. We just have one CrossFit group class people hop into over here. I don't have we ditched our elements or our foundations program a long time ago. We have basically a structure, 3 levels to our group class programming. And I think that helps us address a lot of different needs. We do this both, for the strength work and for the conditioning work. But I think the more interesting thing is how we have structured our strength training to accommodate multiple levels over a long period of time. Where maybe, so our level 1 folks are going to do lots of, either fairly simple cycles, either short cycles. I know more recently we've been rotating sort of max effort and volume work, and rotating our exercise selection a fair amount, and that's worked out well. At certain points in time, we've done long linear cycles and just adding a little bit of weight each time. But for our folks who've been around for a long time, you go up to the level 3 people, it's really you need to do more. Sometimes you need to fine tune those variables a little bit more. So we're looking at longer cycles with a little bit more detail going into that programming.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about kind of understanding where those athletes are maturity-wise in their training, and then understanding them also as individuals. So again, you have general maturity. They've been doing strength training for X amount of years, 5 years, 10 years. And without getting too far in the weeds with it, it's all about how many muscle fibers you've recruited to this point and what are the weird ones left. And sometimes you have to get weird with your programming to get to that last percentage of muscle fibers. And that's why people see those level 3 workouts with odd things like bands and chains and those type of things. It's not because it looks awesome. It's because there's just this last threshold that they need to cross. Whereas the newer CrossFitters, newer people just that are new to strength training in general, everything works at first. So let's just harness that easy stuff.
Yeah, at some point that 5x5 is not going to work anymore. You got to get in some dynamic effort work, or you got to lift heavier or something like that.
I got a big problem with all this stuff though.
What's that?
Here's what it is.
Yep.
With the old school, the fitness regimen, randomized, with the movements, the magic being in the movements, that's the quote.
Mm-hmm.
You could live your life, meaning have your job, have your family, whatever it is that keeps you busy, and you could miss a day and it didn't matter. But now that everything's so structured, how can it be accommodated for people having a normal life?
Well, let's be clear.
Missing a day and still making progress.
Let's be super clear. Missing a day doesn't matter. I mean, this is like, let's keep it in perspective. The people that walk in here and are doing, this program or this programming for a reliable or a reasonable period of time are some of the fittest people on earth. So, and I'm not talking about the people that are, here going to Superfit or have aspiration of regionals. I'm talking about your everyday CrossFitter that comes in and does CrossFit 3 to 4 days a week.
Just compared to general population.
Compared to general population. So like missing a day of your back squat, in the scheme of life doesn't make a bit of difference. Now, when you're talking to your point, I get your point, and it's just one of the sacrifices that we've made. We want to professionalize the training to the level that we can, and it's incumbent on that person. If they want to make it in every time, they try to make it in every time. And I know that RVA is pretty accommodating. I know I'm pretty accommodating when it comes to lifts, because we understand how those strength cycles work. If people need to make up on a different day, we're pretty accommodating on that.
Yeah. I mean, if you do miss, you're on a strength cycle and you miss every single heavy day, yeah, you're missing out on something.
Yes.
But, so there are some definitely big differences between programming for a group and programming for an individual.
Absolutely.
I think with the group, broad trends are more important than some of the specifics.
Yeah.
If you have a certain frequency at which you're programming certain kinds of workouts or certain movements, I think eventually it's going to work out, even if people aren't making certain days. But again, with a individual, you got to be a little more specific with how you're applying that stress.
I agree.
Great answer, fellas.
So we've talked a lot about strength, but there's obviously a lot more to it. I know at some point, no one lifted in CrossFit, really. You lifted every 7 days.
I think Jake was the first person to actually be like, I'm going to lift more often than...
What's wrong with being strong?
Right, every 17 days.
Yeah.
A max
And
effort.
it swung. There was like a big swing to, I feel like, the opposite direction at one point.
Right.
Maybe back in 2010, 11, something like that. It was always like strength bias, this and that. Like that was what everyone called it. No one even calls it strength bias anymore because it's just what everyone does. And I think, interesting enough, we have a shift back somewhere in the middle where people have realized that being strong is only going to get you so far. It's very, very important, but it's not the whole picture. And then now we have to start looking a little more closely at how we're programming our gymnastics work and how we're tailoring the conditioning workouts over time. So beyond strength, when you're looking at a month or a week, how are you starting to lay out the conditioning workouts?
Well, I mean, that's a complicated question, but
we can get in the weeds on it. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, so we've kind of identified together over time what we consider high intensity, mid intensity, and kind of low intensity workouts, and we've kind of generally decided on what the ratio of those that we're going to do, and it kind of depends on where we are in the season. So like if we're this next 3 months, for 2 or 3 months anyways, we'll be doing more moderate intensity to lower intensity metcons.
How would you define that? Is it like a rep range or a time domain or?
Yeah, time domains are one. Staying away from a ton of AMRAPs. I mean, AMRAPs are ones that you're in theory supposed to be working constantly. I love EMOMs for controlling intensity,
right.
And they're hard to get right, especially for group classes. But I think we're getting better at it in the programming, so that's a way to control intensity. Believe it or not, you can actually run much longer workouts and keep them at moderate to low intensity because people are going to self-scale, self-pace. So those are different ways to do that. You can do it with weight. You can push weight into a workout that's going to slow people down to the point that their intensity level. So what you're doing is you're trying to control energy pathways. Which one are they working in, and that kind of correlates to intensity level to a certain degree.
So when you're looking at the month, you're saying, okay, well, I know I want to have, this many workouts of a certain style or a certain energy pathway, a certain intensity level, and you're like sort of plotting it out that way as you're getting started?
Yeah. So first, the laydown for a month goes first, as we talked about, strength training drops down. We drop in all the strength work and go from there. Strength work, and this is something you alluded to with the difference between programming for a group class and for an individual. With a group class, you have a time component that you're worried about, and that's that training.
Of course, yeah, that management is huge.
Yeah. So, if we're going to do a max effort day, we're going to do 4 or 5 by 1 at 90% on our back squat. Well, that's going to take some time. So that automatically dictates a certain time frame for the actual workout itself and how that's going to be. From that, we can pick an intensity level. So say we have 10 minutes that we think is reasonable to work in. If we want a moderate intensity level, I can do something to bring it down, like we talked about the EMOM. If we want a high intensity, we can bring it up to an AMRAP. And at this phase, the initial phase of the year, we're going to look at maybe one high intensity workout a week. Right. So that's something that's, we're going to plug it in and what day that works best. And then you start picking movements from there. We've kind of decided on the best model, I think, that we've come across is that we use the workouts as supplementary work. So it's pretty common to see, if we're doing back squat in the strength work, you're going to see front squats or air squats or something in the workout, because this goes to volume. How much training volume can people handle? Most people cannot handle heavy strength work and a Metcon or a high intensity or medium intensity workout and then supplementary work. So we just push some of that in. So. Mm-hmm.
I also think that's nice where we're focusing on one thing, which makes programming a little bit easier.
And training, I think, as well.
So if it's, again, you back squatted for your lift that day, you did some front squats or maybe some cleans with dropping into a full squat and the conditioning portion. Well, that was a big, very specific stress there. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you get to the next day and you're like, maybe we should do some more squats. Right. It's like, okay, clearly I can see where these big hits of certain specific stresses were, and I know when I want that to happen again, right, and what to avoid maybe, so that you don't run into a situation where people are like, hey, we did 300 pull-ups this week. Right. Like maybe this is weird.
Right. Yeah. And it happens. I mean, the programming's challenging in that way, but we do our best to avoid it. I mean, the reality is when I'm putting together workouts, very little of it has to do with improving your burpee ability. It has to do with, what can your body handle that day? Because we've been on the lookout for overuse injuries for a really long time. And shoulders are a great example. We do a lot of stuff overhead. And so sometimes the workouts are created to get load off of a certain body part. Yeah. So.
I know if we see like a lot of, say, some sandbag get-ups or goblet squats or something, it's probably saying, all right, maybe the last week it was there's something to avoid. Also, we'll say, I know some people freak out when we do a lot of a specific movement. What's going on? Just keep going. People freak out when we do a lot of a specific movement, but your body can handle some short-term overreaching. Yes. And that's one of the ways we can help make progress, Yep. So it's not like that everything has to be perfectly balanced out over, over the week and month. As long as in a long term, as long as you're not a gym that does 300 pull-ups every week, right, you're going to be okay. But if you get a big bump, it's not a big deal, as long as you're paying attention to moving well and, your own scaling level.
Agree with that. Yeah. I mean, cycling movements is probably one of the most complicated things in programming CrossFit, because in general, we think about kind of like a mesocycle with the strength training, and then we bring it into like what's kind of the cycle that we're going to be working on currently, and then I bring it even down. So I program usually a month out, and then I have the strength laid out already. But then it goes down to the week, and then the week I have to look at each day and say, well, we're pushing this day, so we're pulling that day, and this is overhead that day, and so again, cycling those movements is one of the most challenging things, because you're trying to kind of have this perfect confluence of my strength works with my supplementary work, which works with the time domain I want the workout to be in. And I don't want to overstress this, but I do want to overstress that. And yet we want to get gymnastics in, which is a lot of overhead. And so it's just a lot of check and double check and double check. And I know it's nice working in the way that we do, because I send the programming off to you guys, but then I know, Brandon and you and Jamie, also look at the programming. And there's some times where they'll pull something out or put something in, because understanding your population is also an important part.
A lot of times, like Brandon's the guy who ultimately is punching it into our system or the website or whatnot. There'll be times he'll be like, this is kind of weird that this doesn't look quite right, you know? And like, it's a very complicated process, a lot of moving parts. So then it'll just be, hey, people are complaining about this last week. I really think we shouldn't do it again quite so soon. We sub out a movement and then it works out well. You know, it's not like a perfect process, but more people involved seems to smooth some of those things out. Yeah.
And I know that in the CrossFit community, there's probably a lot of different opinions on how far out you program, and I think we probably program out longer than most people, but I think it works for us because the way we've structured our strength goals. Some people would probably argue that having a daily programming or weekly programming would probably offset that, and that, there's probably some validity to that. But I think we have enough double checks in place that keeps us in line.
I mean, I feel like that really gives us good rundown for our process. If you were to sort of give some advice to someone just starting, like maybe they've been doing CrossFit for a year or two on their own, they've been following someone else's, they open up a gym, and they suddenly need to write their own program. What do you think they should start with? Like, what are their first concerns?
Yeah, well, at the risk of I don't know, plugging too much at HQ, the programming guide that they offer in the level 1 is probably a good place to start. I mean, it's, if nothing else, it offers a structure for keeping in check movements, which I think is the hardest thing. And it gives you an idea of where you're at time domain wise, how many movements you're doing, and how complementary or not they are. And I think that'd be a good place to start. I think after that, you got to get your head in the books with strength training and understand what's trying to be accomplished. Starting strength is probably the best starting point for understanding strength training, in my opinion. And then beyond that, there's nothing wrong with rehearsal, writing out programming that you're not going to use. Would this work or would that work? And you're your own best guinea pig. So if you're not doing your own programming, at least for bursts of time throughout the year, you don't understand what your population's going through. So I know there was times when we were trying to understand more advanced programming, like Outlaw and that kind of thing. And I would do this a few years ago. I would do a month ahead. I would be a month ahead trying to figure it out. And so, I think all of those tools for trying to understand how programming works is key. I mean, I think that one of the biggest takeaways I learned from starting programming early on is it's super easy to wreck people. So like that shouldn't be a point of pride. I can write a workout daily that can crush people. So
you could write something that would crush Rich Froning.
Totally.
That's not hard.
No, it's not hard. So being the hardest or the most complicated or the sexiest is really, you get out of that mode pretty quickly, and then you start looking at what's working and what's not working. And I think having to do it yourself lets you understand that a little bit.
I guess my last big question is, we've seen some trends here in what's expected from at the competition level, and I feel like that does filter down beneficially to everyone else who's maybe not as interested in competition. Like, everybody in our group classes are better. They're all better at weightlifting than they were a few years ago, because there's just certain expectations and it works out well. So the next big thing that I feel like is already here is an improvement in gymnastics and body weight movements. I feel like I have grown quite a bit as an instructor in the past year, working with first our competition folks and trying to clean up what previously looked like good movement, and then realizing all the holes and the issues in it. At one point, like, if somebody could do a bar muscle up, you're like, oh, that's great. Keep doing whatever you're doing.
Right.
However it looks, that's awesome. Right. And now we look at it, I'm like, man, there's like 15 things we could fix right here. Let's start with one of them.
Right.
And so that's also like filtered down to, of course, the group classes, where now I can see just basic movement patterns and like see all the, dysfunction there and things we can work on. From a programming perspective, I know this is very broad, but I'm curious about what we can do now. Like, before is like, all right, the obvious solution to improving weightlifting was to do more of it and more structured weightlifting. So outside of, I guess, just the instruction component, like I wonder what you and I can do to get folks better at their body weight movements and basic gymnastics.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, we're going to be best served by doing what we've learned through training weightlifting. So you touched on it, and I think this is really the key to being successful in the CrossFit business, is that it's really understanding about how bodies move. So that was pretty easy to see, pretty steep learning curve with the weightlifting movements, snatch and clean and jerk. When I first started training people, I didn't know what I was seeing. Like I mean, maybe after a few months I could understand that it was not good, but I certainly couldn't understand what was happening to make it not good. And over, you know, the years, you watch people and you get better at it, and you understand what movement pattern is working and what is not. And I think that's going to translate well into the gymnastics focus, because so you take an arm pull versus hip extension in a clean. That's going to be the same thing in a kip. You know, it's like, is somebody are they using their shoulders to initiate a kip, or are they using their legs to initiate a kip? So it's understanding what movement pattern serves us best in the particular movement that we're looking at. So reverse engineering a movement, what is making it successful on a successful athlete, and then understanding what part of their body makes that work, and then looking at our bodies in the gym and seeing whether that's happening or not. And, you know, anyone who's been doing this for any length of time understands that CrossFit's is like survival. You know, you put them into a CrossFit class and they just do whatever they can to make it happen. But ultimately, that's not what training's about. Training's about understanding proper movement, being able to look at different people and how they're compensating for proper movement, and returning them back to that Matt's favorite word, efficient movement pattern that's going to get them,
worst word ever.
that's going to get them to do it with the least amount of effort. And so I think that's going to be our challenge over the next couple years when we're focusing on this, is taking the skills that we've learned, like eyeballing strength movements, which I think we're fairly decent at this point, and then being able to translate that over, watch somebody move through a kipping pull-up or a bar muscle-up or whatever, handstands, and saying, you know, your feet are way out over your butt, so we need to hollow that body up, because I understand that that's the way we get our center of gravity in, or what have you. So that's where I think it's at.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mother said, wrap it up, boys.
Wrap it up.
What do we got? John, do you want to plug anything?
Yeah, Pacific Crest CrossFit on Instagram, Pacific Crest CF. You can follow PacificCrestCrossFit.com. And other than that, that's it.
Is there anything else you'd like to plug?
ArcElements.com.
ArcElements.com.
What is that?
Paleo meal delivery, Portland, Oregon. Also a New Seasons market up there. And we'll be trying to make a bigger impact on the Northwest. So, and any of our RVA, listeners, whenever you're out in the Northwest, you have a home out there, and you'll be on the same program. So
you won't actually miss any days.
You won't miss any days. Colonial CrossFit as well.
Wonderful.
Jake, very nice.
Jake, do you want to plug anything?
No, I'm good. I plug everything all the time.
Your companies are our only sponsors.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it. We will see you next time.
Until then, it's just exercise.